Hello, so today I'm going to talk about The Ladder to the Sky by is it Boyne? I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but this book I picked up in a charity shop a while back, and it was something that really intrigued me. On the front here it says, a deliciously dark tale of ambition, seduction and literary theft, if I can pronounce that with my speech difficulties. And yeah, I picked it up because basically this book is about a man called Maurice Swift, and he is a story thief. He basically befriends other people and steals their stories in various different ways and passes them off as his own. He's a very ambitious person and he really wants to be remembered for being this fantastic author. He's one of those people who's a bit of a literary snob, and yeah, he comes across as very full of himself, and it follows basically his entire life from his young adulthood to when he starts doing this right up until he's older. And it was really interesting because this book is set in 3 different parts. The first part is through another author who's an older gentleman who he befriends and travels around with him. This other man is a writer. He's a famous German writer who's just had a very successful book come out, and Maurice kind of attaches himself to this man, and yeah, things happen. And then the next part of the book, and that half is written in the perspective of the German writer. It's written in his first person, how he interacts with Maurice, how he interacts with him and his thoughts surrounding Maurice, what Maurice is doing. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. I'm trying not to say too much without giving stuff away. It was very well written. It really got me hooked into the story. And then it jumped on to the second part where it's following another colleague of Maurice, who has a completely different views of Maurice. He has a completely different experience with this man. He kind of sees him for what he really is and has a slightly more cynical view. We then get a view from his wife's perspective, who again, another completely different view of her husband. And then the very last, and probably the most interesting, is the last quarter of the book is from Maurice's own perspective. And as you read this book, and as you're reading everybody's different perspectives of Maurice, your view kind of changes of him all along. You know, when you first kind of read it, you think, okay, this is going to be like a dark comedy book. It's going to be, you know, he's like on this great adventure, this kind of book thief, and you're kind of thinking like, is he going to get his comeuppance? Like, what's going to happen with his story and with his life? And as it goes on, like, it very much meanders through his life. And like I said, it spans a great length of his life, from being a young man to an old man, and how different people perceive him and how he perceives himself, and how others perceive what he is doing and how he perceives what he's doing in different ways. It's really, really interesting. This writer, I knew it was going to be well written because it's written by the same author who wrote The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, which I haven't read, but I've heard it's a very well liked book. It's a very popular book, but quite a sad book. But the way this is written is really, really well written. I don't normally like meandering slow books, which is what I would say this is, but it's written in such a way where it's slow, but it's very intriguing. It's like I really wanted to know what was going to happen to him in the end, where his life was going to go. His life had taken many different kind of shifts, and he'd done so many different things in his life, and his career had spanned over quite a length of time, and how the public, you know, thought of his career, and how literary students thought of his career and his colleagues. It was really, really interesting, and how more and more of himself was kind of revealed throughout the books, and you kind of figure out his motives, and you know why he discovers why he's doing this. And yeah, it's really, really good. The ending is very, very satisfying. I find satisfying. I think some people might not find it satisfying, but I really, really did enjoy it. I really enjoyed this whole book, to be honest. I really enjoyed the first half a lot more than I thought I would, because the German writer, he's, you know, talking through his experience of being in the war. He was in the I can't remember, I think it's the First World War or the Second World War, I can't remember. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed his chapters. So when it moved on to, I'm trying to remember what his name was, the German guy, when it moved on to the next part of the book, like the second half, when it's going to be from a second perspective, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this, and I put it down for a little while. And I think his name's Hans, but I could be wrong. I should have looked that up before I started this video, but I didn't, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I almost didn't pick it back up for a little while, but then I was like, you know, I am going to go back to it, and I'm so, so glad I did. Because yeah, it just really, really intrigued me, and it was really beautifully written. You really get a sense of who the characters are in this book, and you get invested in certain characters, like the characters that he meets along his journey. I ended up really liking, and you know, some of them have happy endings and some of them have tragic endings, and yeah, it was just really, really well written. It says endlessly intensive and wickedly funny. I did think this was going to be more humorous than what it was. I didn't particularly find this to be a humorous book. I actually kind of found it to be a bit more melancholy. That was just my take on it. But yeah, I would highly recommend. I'm definitely going to pick up more by this author. I'm very intrigued by, it looks like he has almost a haunted house story that he's published. It says this house is haunted. So yeah, I'm intrigued by that one as well. I really, really love this writing. I'm definitely going to pick up more by him. But yeah, the characters were just very interesting. The plot was really interesting. The whole story, I wanted to know where it was going. So yeah, if you are interested, there are a few points in this that like I want to bring up, but then I also feel like I would give too much away. But I would just say, if you like books written about books or about writers, then you would definitely like this. I really enjoyed that part. I like books that centre around writers, and this is this completely. All of his, you know, everyone he meets in this book is also a writer. He's an inspiring writer, so if you like that premise, then you'll like this. I definitely did. So yeah, I would say if you like interesting characters, if you like stories that focus around homosexuality, sexuality in general, and if you like,
hey, what are you doing out there?
books about books, and yeah, books about mental health also, like observing other people and other people's behaviours and why they do things. So as my little man comes down the corridor, I'm going to end this video here. If you have any questions or recommendations, leave them down below. Any thoughts on this book, let me know. And thank you for watching. Until next time, bye guys.